presenting along with my colleagues, Holly Merdinger and Berry. Just to give you a little background on where this presentation came from, the three of us, among other colleagues, often talk about how we work so hard to help our students improve their writing. We give so much feedback, and so little happens. So what we want to do today is present three very kind of simple techniques that work for us. So I'll be talking about adding grammatical and lexical structures through a highlighting technique. Polly will be talking about using error symbols and a tally system to help students analyze their own errors. And Amy will be talking about a way to get students to complete rubrics to analyze overall strengths and weaknesses in the writing. And the reason we've sequenced it this way is because my technique starts at home with the student in the first draft, and then we kind of go progressively through. So let me start with what I'd like to share with you. So here's the pattern, and let me explain the rationale. So basically, you probably can share this problem. You probably have experience with this problem. Students often do not include the new language they've been studying in their written work. So I don't know, for many, many years I have taught grammatical structures, new vocabulary, new phrases. We spend a whole week digging in. Then I send them home to write the essay. Do I see any evidence of that new language in their paper? No. So for years, it's been really, really frustrating. A few years ago, I thought, I'm going to try something sort of radical. It probably won't work, but it ended up working actually very well. It's super simple, but it can be very effective. So this technique that I'm going to share with you now, I call it my color coding technique, forces students to review what they've been studying. I like the word forces, right? And by doing this type of close editing, students find other errors in their writing, and they become, in my experience, better self-monitors. So it's not only that they're going into their drafts and adding the new language we've been studying, but they're becoming more careful editors of their own work. So how does it work? The sequence is pretty simple. Basically, once we've finished a new unit of study, they go home and they write an essay at home. And I ask them to focus only on content development and organization in their first draft. Now, for this presentation today, I actually had them send me that first version, which was just content and organization without the new language. But typically, what they would do is they just do it on their own, and then on their own, that same weekend, they would then review their draft at home before submitting it to me, so I've seen nothing yet, and intentionally add the language that's been studied. Then, the fun part, they color code their new language in this draft, and they supply a key for me. They submit it to me electronically, because most of them don't have color copiers, and I do. And I pay a lot of money for the coloring, but it's worth it. So that's how that works. So basically what they do is they choose colors for different writing techniques that we've studied. What I want to share with you today is something that we did after 3 weeks of intensive study. So this is week 3, end of week 3. The students were asked to write on fairy tales. We had been studying fairy tales and analyzing fairy tales, talking about how they related to the culture. And these were the language points that we had studied so far. I teach on a team with 3 teachers, so the 3 teachers together had covered these points. So I'm asking them, we're in week 3, you're going home, you're writing your essay, but I want you to, after you've done your first draft, go back and see if you can insert some parallel structure that we studied in the first 3 weeks. Or we spent a lot of time punctuating and learning how to use quotations. We covered all the conditionals. Participial phrases, very useful for retelling fairy tales. Use of pronouns, my colleague had spent quite a bit of time teaching. And then another colleague had talked about sentence variety, going through the simple sentence, the complex sentence, the compound sentence, and how to kind of change your writing by using different types of sentences. So this was the task. and I'm going to ask you to pretend that you are the student. There you go.
Do you get color markers?
So what you're getting right now is a draft. I'm going to go backwards. You're getting point 1 here. The student has written this essay at home, focusing only on content development and organization. So the student is not troubling herself with, oh, I have to include parallel structure or conditionals or whatever. And this is what she ended up doing. Now, normally I wouldn't have received this draft, but for today's presentation, I asked them all to send me their first draft. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at this draft and see if you can find a place as you read it. It's pretty simple, and it's just, it's a short essay. Find a place in the essay, as if you were the student, where you might insert one of these techniques, just one. You can pick any one you want. And then once you've found something, I'm going to ask you to pair up and just share where you would add something. This could make your writing more interesting. It could enhance the level of complexity or the variety. So please read and think about trying to add one of these. You can take a pen or a pencil and just put a little mark on a place that you might add one of these things, imagining that you've been studying these different grammatical forms. One thing you might notice as you're reading the essay is the student might have already included some of these things, not consciously. It just sort of happened. And the students did come and tell me, we couldn't help ourselves. Sometimes we just put that grammar in. But I'm assuming that they're not putting it in, because usually they don't. Okay, has everybody had a chance to read the essay? All right, could you talk with a neighbor, someone sitting next to you? Just maybe get together and say, oh, I might add this here or that there. Share your ideas. Okay, come together in pairs.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily you could add parallel structure cover a thesis.
Oh, okay. We're actually so you want to add one of these?
Yeah, because of this.
Put them in. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because he's got a plan.
Okay, so I think everybody's had a chance to at least imagine where they might insert some of the new language. I'd like to share with you what the student did. And of course, this is the whole class. They all did the same thing. But here's her essay that you have now with the color coding. So you'll notice that she was really big on using a lot of pronouns. And when I went back and looked at the pronouns and how they replaced the nouns, I thought it actually did improve her writing. Whoops, I gotta go back here. So this is her color coding, by the way. So blue is parallel. She had one quote in green. Conditionals are red. All those underlying sentences is where she changed the sentence structure to try to increase some complexity in her writing, to use different sentence structures. So here you have the parallel structure, which is just changed slightly from her original version, but it does make it a little more balanced. Here's a quote: "Gold will always shine everywhere." I asked her if that was really a quote, and she told me yes, that came from a particular tale that she had read. And notice all the underlined sentences. This is where she's really playing with the language and changing the structure. And that's her second page. She put in one participial phrase, and I say to the students, that's fine. You don't need to go crazy on this. Just insert one or two. Show me where you can improve your writing. So basically, that's how it works. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what they told me. Sometimes they're already thinking this way and they're using the grammar, but in my experience, they don't do it enough, and that's why I try this. Would I do this every weekend? No. I would do it maybe twice a semester because it's laborious, it's hard, it's a lot of work, and I wanted to share some of the comments that the students made. So all of them that I interviewed, or I had them write their reactions, they were all positive, but I pulled out 4 just to show you. One student said the experience is great. By doing color coding, I found out some grammatical errors that I had not noticed and enhanced my writing from diverse ways. Though the process was tough, the result was inspiring. So this is kind of an interesting comment in that it's not just inserting the new language that they were doing, but they're also focusing more on their writing and seeing probably typical errors that they make. Another student said the color coding experience helped me to understand some grammar rules that I ignored before, such as the difference between a participial phrase and a gerund, and the proper use of conditionals. Another student said, I found color coding strategies helpful. It helps me attach more importance to the variety of everything I learned so far, and it also helps me analyze the sentence structure better. And then finally, one student said, for me it was very useful because my visual memory works better. So that idea of adding color was very helpful. So it helped me understand what I was writing in a more concise manner. It also helped me see what my paper was missing, and as a consequence, what I should add. So the results, the comments from the students have been very positive, and I asked them, do you want to do it again? And they said, absolutely. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to do it again. So that's my technique.
And what level was this, right?
This is level 8 out of our 10 level program. So it's a high level.
C1, right?
C1 and CEFR.
Carol, one thing, how important is it that they make their own key?
Totally important. Yeah, they all have their own colors, their own key. I'm not imposing the key. I think it's important that they choose the color for what they want to add. It's kind of artistic, right?
How low, I'm just curious on levels, how low might you go with
I think
something like
you can
this?
go as low as you want to go. You could go really low if they're writing a short paragraph.
So just work
The
on.
grammar is a lower level grammar point.
So just-
Absolutely.
just-
It just, you know what it is? This is, for me, this is awareness. That's what
That's right.
it's just awareness. And accountability. Accountability. I teach. They don't take it anywhere. Now they're accountable. They have to show me that they got it, they understood it, and that they can produce it and use it. One more question, then we got to
No, I
move
was
on.
going to say, they're just quickly that they're involved in the process of their learning. They have this agency involved.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, I'd like to introduce Polly, who will now share her technique.
So, like Carol's technique, my technique was also born out of extreme frustration, tearing my hair out, as I was teaching an advanced level class with students who could write very well in terms of the organization and development of their ideas, but they were being held back from rising to the next level that would exempt them from English because of multiple grammatical errors. And this was really holding them back, and because they were level 9 out of 10. 10 would be that they're exempt. And the problem was they knew the rules. I didn't have to teach them, what is a gerund and what is an infinitive or any. They knew those rules, and to go over them again and again. It just seemed like teaching them things they already knew. And yet, when they handed in their essays, they were just filled with those kind of errors. And there were so many that it was really holding them back. If they just had a few here and there, that's normal. Everyone is going to have a few errors. But theirs were just so numerous. And so I was trying to think, as Carol did, what can I do to make them aware of what they're doing, to make them aware, because I would use error symbols, as I'm sure a lot of people do. So I would mark their papers with these correction symbols. This is just a very short part of the list. And they would learn the symbols, and then they would write their paper, and I would put in the symbols, and then they would take it back. And so they knew where the tense errors were, they knew where the agreement errors were, the article errors, and they would correct it, many times correctly, not always. But yet, they would still make the same errors again and again. And so I felt that these students needed awareness, and they also needed a powerful experience. Because I think we all know that in order to change a behavior of any kind, you need to be aware of it, and sometimes you need a powerful experience to kind of be a wake-up call. So I decided that I was going to have my students, after they got their essays with the correction symbols, I was going to have them simply tally each type of error. Carol's is simple because she used colors. Mine is simple because they just counted. Everyone can count. So I gave them a tally sheet, sample like this. And again, this is just a very small sample of it. And for each essay, they would have to tally how many errors of each type they had. And they would just do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they would see, and my idea was that if they could see how many errors of each type they had, that it would raise their awareness, because sometimes students are not aware of what their major weakness is. Just last week, I had a French student, and I had a conference with her, and I said, what do you think your main problem is in writing? And she said, articles. And then we sat down and looked together at her 5-paragraph essay, in which she had 3 errors with articles. So clearly that wasn't her main source of weakness. But students often don't know, or they say, I need more vocabularies. That's the most common thing that I hear. It's just they think they need more. So they're not always aware of their most common grammatical weaknesses or areas of strength. Because if you look at the sheet, at the tally sheet, what they're going to find is that they may have 15 errors in tense, but maybe they have no errors in subject-verb agreement. So it wound up not being just tallying their errors. It was really looking at both things. They could say, wow, I'm pretty good with active and passive, or count and non-count nouns. And so it wasn't just a negative experience for them. Fairy tales here. Okay, so, sorry. And again, students often repeat the same errors, and I felt like they had no strategy to eradicate those errors. They were just constant. We were correcting, they were revising. We were correcting, they were revising. And it was endless. So I felt that by tallying the errors, it would make them aware of their areas of strength and weakness. And I felt that it's also a powerful force for change. And this was brought home to me by a Japanese student whose essay you're going to see shortly, who counted her errors with articles after one essay, and she had something like 48 errors. And when we talked about it, she said, I'm so shocked. I am just shocked. She had no idea that she had that many errors in one structure. So that really made it clear to me that this could be very powerful. Maybe not for everyone, but certainly for some students. Okay. And then I thought, well, this is still kind of general. If you have a problem with tenses, what does that mean? Which tenses? How are you going to correct it if you don't know what kind? So the next step, was I had the students analyze their errors. And so they would take the area that had the greatest number of errors, and then we would break it down more finely so they could see what is their specific type of error. If they're having problems with tenses, is it because they're using the present tense instead of the past instead of the present perfect instead of past instead of present perfect. So it really makes a difference, because what are you going to say if they have tense errors? You need to work on your tenses, or here are some extra exercises you can do to work on your tenses. It's too vague. It doesn't give them a strategy to eradicate those errors. And also, it makes eliminating the error more manageable, because instead of saying, I don't know articles, I'm terrible with articles, they can say, I usually omit the article before singular count nouns. Great, then we don't have to worry about all the other millions of rules about articles. We just have to focus on that one kind, and that makes them feel less frustrated. It gives them more confidence, because again, it shows them that it's not that they don't know anything about this. They know a lot about it, but they just don't know that one piece. So this was the original error tally sheet, and they fill it out. I just wrote essay 4, but they do this throughout the semester, so there could be 12 essays, and hopefully what we see is that the numbers go down in each category. Okay, so I gave you an error analysis here, mainly for articles and just a few verb tenses, but this is a separate handout that they get. And again, the purpose of this is that the students have to do this. I don't do this. They do it, and they show it to me, and we talk about it when we have a conference. So, for articles, what are all the possibilities of the different errors a student could make? Is it a missing or an, a missing the, unnecessary unnecessary the? Do they use instead of the, or the instead of a? And verb tenses, you can put in whichever tenses you've been working on. So, you don't have to have every single possibility of tense confusion in the world. And so then, again, they tallied for each essay just looking at those things. So if their problem was articles, they would do this tally. So they don't do it for everything. That would be too laborious and boring. But this is pretty easy to do. And so I have a handout here that I'd like you to try. So this was an essay written by a student in level 8, below level 8. And actually, the task is going to be a little harder than I had intended, because originally I had marked where all the errors in articles were, but the wrong one got printed. So you're going to have to mark where all the errors in articles are. So as soon as you get the handout, take a pen or a pencil and just mark every place where you think there's an error with articles. Then I'll tell you how many there are. We'll see if the numbers match. So this was just an introduction. There certainly are. And it's untouched. I didn't change anything just to make it more impressive. okay, when you finish or when you're almost finished, it's okay if you don't do the whole thing. Work together with the person next to you and now decide what kind of errors does this student have? How many of each type? Pick one type. And, or you can each pick a different type, that might be easier, and go through and tally. There's a lot of, I didn't categories.
For education for the rest of the year. After yeah, just start. So the
That's how it is.
Yeah, understood.
I got 16 hours.
16 is right. Yeah. I mean, there's a little wiggle room. You know, not everyone will correct everything exactly the same way. But if it's close to that,
For the, or the, they're all here, right?
But it's not.
yeah, so it looks like the big house is well, it's interesting, isn't it? So that is
Right. That's
and I love realizing that you're good on something. Because then I'm teaching them. Oh, so great. Are you students high level?
what's your total number? 16 is correct. Okay. Well, there's a little wiggle room. We all correct these differently. That's fine. If it's close to 16, you're okay.
Oh, well, you know, yeah. Daddy,
Okay, so let's talk about what we found. How many mistakes did the student have with missing a or an?
I got 4.
5, 4. Okay, I got 3, but that's okay. Because there's always more than one way to read something, so that's fine. How many with missing the? 9. A lot. A lot, really a lot. So I counted 12. I don't know if anyone had more around that number. And unnecessary a? Yeah, no, unnecessary I didn't see anything.
Neither.
And unnecessary the? One. The World War II.
The World.
Right. So, doing this for just one grammatical structure makes this so much more manageable. The student can see clearly, okay, first thing I would say is, you're really good with using a and and you don't put in any unnecessary us, and you don't mix up the articles, because sometimes students say, I never know if I should use a or the, and honestly, I think sometimes students just put it in randomly. They really are not sure. They figure they have a 50-50 chance, unless you count leaving it out, and then it gets a little harder. But some students really do it by how it sounds. They really don't know all the rules. And, there are so many rules. There are so many rules about articles. I don't know if I've ever taught all of them. So this is a powerful thing for a student to see. And what happens is they can just look at this and say, wow, I had 11 missing thes. So what rules does this student need to learn? What rules about articles does the student need to learn based on these errors?
We're talking about specifics.
Okay, and then how can something be specific?
Well, past 20 years.
Sorry?
Like past
Okay, so
20
with
years.
time phrases, the past 20 years, the next 20
Time
years,
frames.
and what else? Phrases with of, right? Like the noun of noun, right, noun followed by prepositional phrase. So there aren't that many rules that the student needs to learn if we just focus on their area, the area where they had the greatest weakness. So I feel a little funny telling people, have your students count, but it really has been very effective. And my student who had the 40-something errors, I just looked at her last 3, she was from a few years ago, but I saved her essays, and I saw that the next essay she wrote had 36 errors, the next one had 24, the next one had 16, and the next one had 8. So she was so happy. She was so happy with herself because she really felt a sense of achievement. And all you have to do is count. So, and I'll turn the attention now to Barry.
All right, so I feel very lucky to teach at Columbia with such wonderful colleagues. They showed you 2 methods for promoting student-driven revision in the text, promoting complexity, promoting accuracy. And the technique I'm going to present is about sort of pulling students back to look at the bigger picture, using a rubric to help them identify that there's more to their writing than just the verb tense errors and the article errors that they're making. Although those are very important, sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience, but you go into a writing conference with a student and you say, well, what do you think are your strengths and weaknesses? And they just give you the blanket grammar. And so this gets my students really thinking about the full big picture of their writing and how sort of the pieces of writing kind of fit together in a draft. So rubrics, I don't know, some people think they're kind of a dirty word in today's assessment movement, but I really feel like they provide students with a big picture. And we have, obviously, a range of teaching experience in the room. Some of us are just in the field. Some of us have been in the field for a while. And I've definitely had the experience of handing back grades to students and students being disappointed and being like, why? Why did I get this grade? And so rubrics are really a way to help them understand what parts of the assignment were more important on this draft or less important on this draft. Where do they need to really focus the process, focus their attention in the process of writing. And I also feel that rubrics can help me be transparent to the student about what exactly I'm looking for. We all have slightly different teaching styles, and we have different things that we want the student to focus on at any one moment. Perhaps we're teaching a paragraph and we want them to focus on topic sentences. Perhaps it's thesis statements, perhaps it's accuracy. We often shift the focus from assignment to assignment. So this is kind of my template for rubrics as I use them in my classes, I should say. I have sort of a category, name, and description. I have comments, and I have a score, which can vary based on how much I want each category to be worth at any one time. Now, it is my teaching practice to give students the rubric before drafts 2 or 3. Draft 1, I want them to just focus on communicating their ideas and communicating meaning and get into the writing process so that they can, put their ideas on a page. This section, I have to say, I've sometimes dropped during midterms or finals when the grading process needs to be sped up. But I don't necessarily decrease the feedback here. What I do instead is sometimes I will just highlight a descriptor if they need to work on that particular descriptor. So if I'm pressed for time and I don't have as much time to give them detailed feedback here, I will still say which of the descriptions they're particularly struggling with. So I'm going to pass out a handout to you now. And this is a handout for an assignment that was a paragraph long. I was trying to get them to write longer, more in-depth paragraphs, and this was process writing. This is for a level 6 class, which is B1, right? B2?
B2.
B2, okay. A level 6 at the ALP, which is about B2. So, upper intermediate, generally. And one of the ways that ACTFL describes this transition is from describing the concrete to describing the abstract. And so we work on cementing their description of the concrete through a concrete process type assignment, and then building on that with more abstract things like argument essays, persuasive papers, etc. So this was at the beginning of the semester. And a key thing in the instructions here is this paragraph should demonstrate the paragraph structure and process language techniques learned in class, so that there is a real unity between the exercises and the grammar practice and the topic sentences exercises, and then what the student does in the writing. Okay, so if you take a look at the handouts you just received, the rubric for this assignment is on the front. And just take a moment to scan the descriptions, and you can let me know if you have any questions. Okay, if there are no questions, I'd like to invite you to complete the hands-on part of this section of our presentation by taking a look at the second page of your handout. We have a draft 3 of this paragraph, and just read it quickly, and then when you're done, turn to your neighbor and discuss how you would fill out the rubric for this paragraph. So go ahead and talk to your neighbor about what you see in the paragraph and how you would complete the rubric.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's quite, you know, if I put all the steps of the organization. Okay. I mean, like the topics are so simple. Sort of like clearing the road with like is what I would do, like years later. So they were all over the place. Yeah, that's true. I don't really love yeah, it's kind of like sentence, right? With no connection. do this step before you do this, after you do that, and that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, I just looked up here and their grammar has a lot of repeated here. It says basic errors are not repeated, so there's an error. But I mean, there's only one of them. So they're not like repeated. It's not,
I got you. I got
It's what I hear.
Could you pass those down, please?
Good.
I do like that somehow.
So, at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions. I will make a few notes that, as I think my colleagues have said before, we all have a little bit slightly different teaching styles, and there was a question about sort of this level, and this is a draft 3, so this student has already worked through 2 previous drafts up to this point, and because she was a 6, to me, that the process she'd gone through and the accuracy she'd gone through really showed a lot of improvement. So as you can see on my completed rubric, I did note that there was still a pattern of article error, but we had corrected many other grammatical errors in draft 2. One part that I forgot to mention was that we had practiced topic sentences that didn't have I in them. And you know, the debate over I still rages on, but I tell my students, I know you can write with it, I want to know that you can write without it. You may need it, you may not need it, so show me it. So I often use a lot of positive feedback. For a 6, again, I thought this was decent complexity. I thought it was good, especially at the beginning of the semester. This was their first writing assignment in the semester, first take-home assignment. So, you know, later in the semester, I challenged them a bit more. Vocabulary, as you can see, there were vocabulary errors in the paragraph. But because this is a 6 and because she's at the beginning of the semester and because she's written 3 drafts, my descriptor says is used mostly correctly. And from my judgment, most of the words were used correctly. The errors were still few and far between. So this was one of the stronger paragraphs in the class. They ranged. And often the students who have to do a lot heavier revisions on drafts 1 and drafts 2 have lower scores on drafts 3, just because they had a lot more work to do and they didn't quite get as far. Those are often students who kind of misunderstand what it is they're doing, and so, you know, kind of rewrite everything. Are there any questions?
I'm looking at how specific the rubric is. So it's changing, so it's changing every single draft, and it's changing every single assignment. Yes?
Not
No?
for this class. For 6s, I had the same rubric on draft 2 and draft 3. So they have a chance to see their score go up, and they feel very vindicated when it does. For my level 9 general studies matriculated students, I have separate rubrics for drafts 2 and drafts 3, because I do expect more after the revisions.
Do you feel that 3 drafts is necessary to get to where you want to be?
It depends on the situation. It depends on the task, the level, the point in the semester. Sometimes earlier on in the semester, do 2 drafts. But you know, as you know, I'm a big believer in peer feedback, and my first draft is usually followed by a round of peer feedback, and then I have draft 2 and teacher feedback, and then draft 3. And this is sort of the summative rubric. The formative rubric was on draft 2, and they could form their changes from that.
I just want to say that I like this rubric, and I think it could be really useful with lower level learners, which I appreciate. I haven't really seen a lot of rubrics that I could see using for more beginner level or low intermediate. And also I like the emphasis it gives to grammar and accuracy and language.
And you can, as I was talking with my colleague about, you can change the numbers, and you can explain to students, you know, on this draft, I really want you to focus on these ideas, or I want you to focus more on grammar and vocabulary. On in my level 9 class, when we have in-class exams, I always say that we're weighting grammar and vocabulary more heavily because they don't have the dictionaries and the internet that they have for take-home essays. That, you know, they have a lot more reference aids at home than they do in an in-class exam. So grammar and vocabulary are rated more heavily because I want to see what they can do a little bit more on their own. There was a question about how do I know how many points to take off? And it's kind of about communication with my student. Do I want to give them the message that they did great, don't work on this category, move on to another one? Do I want to give them the message, you still need to pay a little bit of attention, work on a few finishing touches, but you're mostly good? Or do I need to give them the message that this is the category you want to focus on? And so thinking about those, you know, helps me to figure out, do I want to take off 1 or 2 points, 3 or 4, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes when I have a rubric that has even 10 points for each category, I'll think like the grading percentages. So 9 out of 10 would be like 90%, which is A minus, you know, the A range is in the 90s. 8 out of 10, 80 is in the B range, and then 7 is in the C range. So as you can see at the bottom, I've calculated it for them, you know, dividing 47 by 50 and 94% is an A. So, because many times my students come over and they don't really understand what the numbers mean, but they understand what the letter grade means. So that really communicates a message to them.
I'm sorry if I missed this. I just wanted to ask if you give the grading rubric on all of their drafts, and if you don't, then do they all kind of tend to wind up getting very high grades?
I don't give it on draft 1. I do give them on drafts 2 and drafts 3.
Oh, so they see the jump.
Yeah, so they do see the jump from draft 2 to draft 3. But I want them to, many of my students have trouble just putting words on the page, especially the upper levels, because they hear, I've got to focus on articles, I've got to get good, I needed better vocabulary words, and they're just worrying about so much that if I can get a draft on the paper and then help them fix it, often I find they have more buy-in to the writing process as a whole if it sort of stays on drafts 2 and 3.
And which grade comes towards your final grade then? The grade for the third draft or the second draft?
I actually put both grades into courseworks, into our grade calculation system, because I tell them that it's measuring different things. The grade on draft 2 sort of measures your ability on your own with a little bit of peer feedback and going back and revising yourself. And then the grade on draft 3, reflects more how you can revise based on teacher feedback. So because they're sort of measuring different things, I put both grades in.
After draft 3, do they submit a final?
This is the final
This is
draft.
draft 3 is
Yeah.
the final.
But they do receive a rubric so that they can know what to focus on in future papers. Well, I'd like to ask my other 2 colleagues to come back up in case you have any questions for them. I think we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions for any of the 3 of us?
I have a question for Polly. Polly, regarding this. Are you, maybe I missed that, but the students do this, or you do it for the
No,
students?
I mark the errors with the symbols, but if it's an article error, I just write article.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They have to do the analysis because it's their discovery process.
So they, and like, in your experience, they are able to identify the type of,
Yeah, because once they've corrected it, they know. They will correct it. I look at it again to make sure they've corrected it correctly. But then it's easy for them to count.
okay, because I was wondering, who does this? Because
Yeah.
if you do all this.
No. Thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions, thank you very much for coming.
We're taking some lunch now, and we have an hour and 20